comfortable jeans you will ever wear.
Today we will float the old Santee River in spring and cook hominy bread in the kitchen. Hominy bread is really a kind of a spoon bread, except it's made from grits. And those of you that are spoon bread aficionados, you know what I'm talking about. I don't know if you've ever had this particular version of it, but it is so good. I had it for supper last night, and I eat more of that than anything else in sight. In fact, I ate half of what I'm going to cook now, and really I'm going to cook enough for about 4 or 5 people. But it's a side dish for game and seafood. You put it on the plate and eat it with a spoon. That's why they call it spoon bread, but it's called hominy bread. Now I've got a half a cup of hot grits here that I have just prepared in this big bowl. And you'll see the ingredients as it shows the recipe, but I'm going to put in 2 tablespoons of butter into the hot grits. If I can get it out of there, it's so soft. There we go. And salt to taste. I have beaten 2 eggs rather thoroughly. And I'm going to add into this. Now this is going to be awful soupy when you start, but you got to cook it about 45 minutes in a hot oven. I've got the oven set on 425 degrees, and so it's going to dry out, and when you get through, it's going to have the consistency kind of sort of like custard. I have 2 cups of milk, and I'm going to put 1 cup in here now. About half of the milk that I have. And stir this up. Let the butter melt. And the final ingredient is a cup of Lassiter Mills' finest, House Autry, of course, white cornmeal, water ground, and I mix this in. And stir it in as you go, and add the milk. Now it's going to look like you're going to have too much milk. That's going to be your first time I ever made this. I thought, man, this is just going to be a bunch of soup poured out on the plate. But take my word for it, it will firm up after you have cooked it. Alrighty, that's got all of our cornmeal in there, and I'm going to switch implements here because I want to kind of beat it a little bit, make sure we get all the lumps out of it, and put the rest of the milk in there as we're mixing, blending. Now we're getting somewhere. We'll get downright serious about this thing. Okay. There's your spoon bread before it gets the heat treatment. I've got a very well-greased casserole here, smeared with a lot of butter. Pour this in. And as I say, we will put it in the oven and cook it about 45 minutes at 425 degrees until it gets kind of hot and puffy on top. It'll kind of puff up a little bit and get kind of hot, and when you spoon it, it'll be like custard. You just spoon it out, serve it on the plate like you would a vegetable or anything else along with your fish or your game, whatever you happen to have. A little melted butter on top of it is great, or you might want to put, if you got a little red eye gravy with some country ham, that's great, or just whatever gravy you might have off of the game that you're cooking. But that spoon bread, or what I call hominy bread, because it's made with grits, and it really is good. It's one of the best spoon breads that I have ever eaten, if I did cook it. I'll be back here in a minute. We're going to go down and canoe the old Santee River in the spring, and that's coming up after these very important messages.
Yesterday's wine.
They've had more hits than any 2 country stars alive today. That's why we proudly present this special album, a tribute to Merle Haggard and George Jones, featuring Merle Haggard singing his all-time classics.
I'm proud to be an Okie from Muskogee.
Plus the latest hits from this living legend.
The best of the free life behind us now.
the good times really over for good.
Big city turned me loose and set me free.
The best of Merle Haggard.
Going where the lonely go.
Plus the best of the one and only George Jones.
I'm still the same old me.
The first album with the original hits from both these all-time greats.
But I've always got lucky with you. Oh, my baby, won't you shine?
And as a special bonus, you'll also get Merle and George singing together in their history-making duets.
Dixie water back.
The best of Merle and the best of George, plus their historic duets, all on one incredible album.
Making believe.
Remember, this special album is not available in stores. Stay tuned to order yours now.
To order, call toll-free 1-800-338-9999. To save all COD and handling charges and pay only $8.98 for the album, $9.98 for the tape. Send check or money order to Merle and George, P.O. Box F15, Florence, South Carolina 29501. Remember, to save all additional charges, send check or money order to Merle and George, P.O. Box F15, Florence, South Carolina.
I've got a lot of film I want to show you here today. If I have a chance to get back, it won't be done yet because it's got to cook 45 minutes. But if I get a chance, I'll get back out into the kitchen and just show you the progress that our hominy bread is making out there. But you got to cook it 45 minutes, just until it's nice and brown and puffy on top, and has texture kind of like custard, like spoon bread, and then it's ready to serve. I enjoy canoeing rivers very, very much. There's a lot of them I've got to go yet that I haven't seen, and I have seen a lot of them in my time, and it's one of the most pleasant ways to see a river. You see it slow, you get to ease along there not making any noise, and you fish and you watch the wildlife, and it's just the ideal way to become acquainted with a river. There's one river that I keep going back to over and over and over again, and I hope until I die I will have the chance to go back, because I never get tired of floating the old Santee River. I guess I have floated it in every month of the year. I floated it in February and in January when it was cold and the ducks were on it, and I floated it in the spring and in the fall. I have done it in July and August, but it's a little hot down there in that swamp in July and August, and you want to stay out on the sandbars if you go then, because if you go in the woods, the mosquitoes will tattoo a battleship on you. They don't like you when you go into the woods and intrude on their privacy, and they can be downright fierce. But if you stay out on the sandbars where it's scalding hot, they won't come out there and get you. But it doesn't make any difference. I love to go down there anytime. And that's where I'm going to take you now, coincidentally enough, on a spring float trip. We're going to start at Lake Marion, the dam there, right below the dam, Wilson Dam, which impounds the upper lake at Santee Cooper. And with us today, as are with us on many of these trips, are our good friends Dan and Maureen Bell from Bell's Winter Park, Bell's Marina, there in Eutaw Springs, and another couple that are very good friends of mine, Ann and Dan Upton from Ellery, South Carolina. Dan is a boat manufacturer representative. He represents boats and boating equipment, travels around calling on dealers. We love to make this trip, and you're going to see three different kinds of boats here. Now, this is my old cargo canoe, my old aluminum flat-bottom lake canoe with a transom on the back for a little small motor and a keel on it. That zebra stripe canoe that you see is a round bottom. It's actually a whitewater canoe, although we're not going to have much whitewater on this particular float. But it is a whitewater canoe, the zebra stripe one there. And Dan and Maureen favor a little small swamp type of boat that you'll see here in just a minute that also carries a motor. We like to carry at least one motor, and on this particular occasion we will have two, so that if you want to crank up, if you hit the slow places and you decide you don't want to fish anymore and you want to run on down, maybe you're getting a little late for camp on that particular afternoon or whatever, this is a good idea to rig up before you get in a canoe. The reason I favor a canoe is because it will really carry more gear than most other types of boats. It will carry more gear than a John boat. And the reason it will is you're reconciled to the idea that once you get in your seat in a canoe, you stay in it. You don't get up and walk around in a canoe. This guy came over just to see what was going on. He said, where are you guys going? I said, we're going to float the river a little bit. And he said, okay, good luck. And I said the same to you. He's a good fisherman there. And he just came over to check us out. He said, nice canoe, and then he went on about his business. But we're shoving off here below Wilson Dam. There's a good ramp there. Anybody at Santee Cooper can tell you how to find this place. And the gar and the carp were spawning. This is late April, early May. It's actually the last day of April and the first 2 days of May. It's a 3-day trip. And they're the carp pursuing Mother Nature's orders to go forth and propagate. And that's what they were doing there in the shallows. This is a 3-day, 2-night trip. We get in the morning, we try to get in and be moving, be floating on the water by somewhere around 9 o'clock. And that makes a leisurely trip. We spend, it's about a 24 or 25 mile trip. We spend the first night a third of the way, 8 or 9 miles down the river. And the second night, an equal distance on further down, and then go on in. And generally get back to the boat ramp about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the third day. Dan's got a little bass here. Dan Upton from Ellery. He's going to put that one back, but you'll catch all the fish if you know anything about fishing, and if you fish with any reasonable diligence at all, you'll catch all the fish that you can eat on a trip like this. At night, a lot of times we'll spend the night on a sandbar, and we'll put out bottom rigs and catch catfish, fishing at night with chicken livers or cut bait, cut herring or something of that sort, worms. But it's a good game fish river. It's a good largemouth bass river. There's some real hogs in here, and in fact there's some in here so big that you can't whip them. There's so much stuff in the water, so many snags and trees and stumps that are down in the water that it's very, very difficult to get a really big bass. I'm talking about a 10 or 11 or 12 pound bass. Every once in a while somebody will look up and get one, but they're not all that hard to hook, but they're that hard to land when you get them out of something like what Danny Bell is fishing in here now. Dan's got a nice something over there, and I went rushing over to see what it was, and it was a gar. You see lots of gars in the water. And it broke off. He was just going to hold it up and show it to the camera. That thing's about 4 feet long, and he probably weighed, I don't know, what, 10, 12 pounds, something of that sort. But he was a horse. He twisted off and got loose. Well, we generally spend the first night at a place we call Little River. It's where what used to be Little River, a stream in that part of the country that came through the swamp, comes in on the left and forms a sort of a point that a big sandbar has grown up between the two streams, between the main river and Little River. And we like to camp on that sandbar because it's good fishing at night for catfish. And of course a gar or a sturgeon or something like that's liable to come along and chomp down on whatever you got, and then you just hang on and let him have it, let him go with it. I've had things that I'm sure were sturgeon that would come along and pick your bait up, and it's like that thing in that movie Jaws. It just goes chong, 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 and it just goes steaming off down the river, never slows down, never speeds up, and just takes all your line. And you sit there with your cap in your hand and wave goodbye. But this is a trip to take leisurely, drift along and fish. We make camp, we cook supper. The next morning we get up about daylight and go out and fish. And we come back in and get breakfast. Then we break camp, load everything up. You can see the gear that I've got in this canoe here. That's an 18-foot flat-bottom cargo canoe. It's what I call my Canadian Lake canoe, and it will carry somewhere in the neighborhoods of half a ton of equipment. And everybody looks at it when I go by and they say, where are you going, buddy? To Africa for 6 months? And I say, no, I'm just going to spend a couple of days here, but I have to have all this stuff. I got to have my table and my stove and my cushions and my life jackets and all my clothes and groceries and ice chest full of beverages and all that sort of stuff. You got to have that stuff to go along. And I find that a canoe paddles so much easier, moves along so much easier than, for instance, a 12 or 14-foot John boat, and I can carry just as much, if not more, gear in it. I just got to be sure I don't get up and walk back and forth from one end of the other in the canoe like you might be able to do in the John boat. Well, that was the first half of the trip. We're going to take that same trip up. We've got a day and a half to go on it to complete our trip down the old Santee River, and I'm going to take you back down there in just a minute after these very important messages. This is my partner here at the Southern Sportsman restaurant, Bobby Caraway. What you eating?
Mako shark steak. How about you?
Fresh fried eel.
Well, you could have had frog legs.
Well, you could have had fish imperial.
Well, you could have had quail with grits and gravy.
And you could have had sweet and sour duck.
And you could have had Marion sole.
Rabbit supreme.
Seafood platter.
Stuffed rainbow trout.
Ribeye.
Fried oysters.
Spicy boiled trout.
Oyster pie.
The menu at the Southern Sportsman is worth arguing about.
Shark steak.
You already said that. I'd like to introduce you to another fine product from House Autry, their versatile chicken fry mix in the blue and orange box. With House Autry chicken fry mix, you can fry all kinds of foods like this quail or chicken, chopped steak, or how about these fried vegetables and onion rings? And it's a great gravy mix, but that's not all. House Autry chicken fry mix is a perfect coating for baking pork chops, veal, or chicken. House Autry chicken fry mix for frying or baking from the fine folks of House Autry Mills, Newton Grove, North Carolina.
Stingy Snake, the live-action salt flavor worm, is the hottest bass-busting lure on the market. The folks at Seeker Lure make you this fantastic get-acquainted offer. We'll send you an assortment of 60 Sneaky Snakes, and 140 tournament-tested worms, and 100 red-hot crappie jigs, and 40 Franc trailers, and 20 of the newest in lures, the Shining Shad, for the unbelievable low price of $23.95. That's a $60 value for $23.95. Call toll-free, or send your check or money order to Sneaky Snake, Post Office Box 710, Mountain Home, North Carolina, 28758. One of our most popular dishes at the Southern Sportsman is the sweet and sour duck, a special recipe. The same goes for our frog legs. We cook them different. And Frank's fried shrimp, marinated in cognac, fried in a beer batter, served with a special sauce. Wow, you could say that about all 25 of our recipes on the Southern Sportsman menu. Our most frequent complaint is that we don't charge enough. Well, we put out the best game and seafood we can at the Southern Sportsman at a fair profit. If you don't think you've paid enough, fine. Give the rest to your favorite charity with our compliment. I have had the pleasure quite often of going down the old river with people whose company I enjoy and admire very much on their first trip. And it's just a pleasure to see the delight they take in that river, because you're liable to see anything. You might look up and see an eagle. You might see a deer swimming across the river. I never saw one, but I had a friend that was drifting down there one day, and two bears swam right across the river right in front of him and went into the swamp on the other side. But you see all sorts of wildlife, birds and everything else. And people are kind of surprised to find out that you've got rapids, shoal water, that close to the ocean. We're only by air maybe 50 miles from the ocean, but we're down in that low country coastal plain of South Carolina. But millions of years ago, one of the old ancient seabeds laid down these oyster bars that have become a kind of a rock ledge that is sort of crisscross, striated along the coast down there. And where the streams have tried to cut through them, quite often you find these white water areas or shoals. And I'm going to show you what I'm talking about in the segment that we have here now, the remainder of the film that we've got on this trip. The last of April and the 1st of May, going down the old river. It's cool enough in the morning that you take on a light jacket or something like that, but during the day, you want to take a swim, that's fine. The water is invigoratingly cool. And actually, we're taking more than a swim here. We're having our daily ablutions. We got a bar of soap, and we're swabbing down. And never mind the alligators. I've seen some in there that are 12 or 14 feet long, but I've never known of an alligator to attack anybody down there. If I saw one that size while I was in the water, I'd get out and let him have it. But I've never heard of anybody being attacked by one, and actually they're rather mild-mannered, inoffensive critters. This is what we call catching lunch on the go. We've got one of the motors cranked up. Danny cranked his little motor up there in the middle, and we just kind of rafted up and proceeding on down the river. And the girl said, "It's lunchtime, what would you like?" And I said, "Okay, I'll have a bologna sandwich." And so they outed with the bologna sandwich and a little potato salad and some chips and a few things like that. Now, this is one of those places that I'm telling you about. There's several of them going down the old Santee River. The old Santee is a flood control project. Actually, there's a small power plant there at Wilson Dam, but it's primarily designed to tap the excess water when you have too much rain up north in the mountains of the Carolinas and that water runs down. This is sort of the relief valve of the tap-off, and this water's tapped off and goes into the Atlantic Ocean near Georgetown. But there's always some current there. They're always generating at least a little power, and this is, you're seeing the normal average current. This is about normal. Of course, the lakes can get muddy, and when they do, this river gets muddy down below. But when you catch it in this condition, the fishing's good, and it's just a beautiful trip. But you can see these little shoals here, a little white water, and people are just amazed after they've been in that flat country for days and days, hours and hours of drifting along on a slow, slack river to suddenly come to this and see it. And the first time I ever saw it, I was amazed. These guys said, we're going to take you down to the rapids, and I thought they were joshing me. And we got down there, and sure enough, there were rocks in the middle of the river and white water flowing over it. This is a little pop tent. This is a style of tent that I like. The reason I like it is because the poles are on the outside. It's sort of an umbrella effect. The ribs are outside. You don't have a pole sticking up in the middle that you got to crawl around when you go in there. That particular model is called a 9-foot model. It's 9 feet in diameter, but it has about a 6.5 or 7-foot ceiling, and you can just walk in and out of it. And I like that. I'm getting a little too old, and my knees are getting a little too stiff to go crawling in on my hands and knees out of pup tents anymore. I used to do that when I was a Boy Scout, but I'm getting spoiled in my old age. Now I like a tent I can stand up and walk in. And that's why I like that particular tent. Again, we're at camp. We're 2/3 of the way down. This is our second night. The guys went out to do a little fishing right before dark. I'm in there shooting film, and in just a minute, I'm going to jump on the stove again and whip up a little something. Here I am cooking dinner. And the next morning, we break camp, load up again. That was a quick night we had there, but there's not a great deal to show at night down there anyway. You go to bed and you go to sleep. And we proceed on down to fish our way out. It's a marvelous trip. I never get tired of it. I've never spent a single minute in which I was bored making this trip. And when you hit these slack places, you can crank up the motor or you can just paddle, but that's why I favor the canoe, because the canoe is the easiest boat to paddle. This is the second and last series above the U.S. Highway 52 bridge, which is where we're going to take out. This is about 5 miles upstream. And a good many years ago, the deer hunters and the fishermen in this river blasted a trench. It's on the left side, just before you get to those shoals, that fall water that you saw there. They went in there with dynamite and cut a ditch so they could run up and down it in their small boats with outboard motors. And this is what that ditch looks like. And if you're drifting down the river and you come to this ditch, you're about 5 miles from the Highway 52 bridge, which is about a 3-hour paddle if you just paddle along steady and don't stop. So that'll give you an idea. When you hit this point, you can't miss this. And when you miss this point on the river, it's the second big waterfall area that you come to. You'll know you're about 5 miles from your takeout point. And you ought to be here, if you want to fish on down and go leisurely, take it easy, you should be here somewhere around noon of the third day that you're on the river. If you're there at 11 o'clock in the morning, you're in good shape. If you're there at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you're going to be a little late making your 3 o'clock appointment to get out at the bridge. Well, that'll give you some idea. It's hard when you go down a strange river you've never been down before. You don't know quite how far you've got to go to get out. You keep wondering, are you ever going to find the bridge or the ramp or wherever it is that you're going to take out on your first time, and you don't know it. So I'm telling you, when you stop here at this second falls, you got 5 miles to go on the old Santee River. And again, we're having lunch. I don't know why I put so much time in filming food, but I like food. Food is one of my favorite things. I eat a lot of food, and I talk about food a lot, and I film food, and I make part of my living out of food. I guess that's why I'm so preoccupied with it. And that was some food that Dan let go there. We're getting ready to come out now. We ate fish on the whole trip down, but we didn't want to carry any out. We just kept what we were going to eat. I'd fry them up at night. So he just released that. But we're getting close to the end of our journey now. And right above that bridge, you'll come into an area where there's a lot of grass, a lot of thick weeds growing. The river is very wide and has a lot of grass growing in it. And this is a Highway 52 bridge there that you see to get out. And if you get out about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, somewhere there about, have somebody meet you there. I don't recommend you leave a car there. I recommend you have somebody, hire somebody if you have to, pay them $10 to come down there. That's all the time we have. I'll be back here in a minute for a final word after this. I feel comfortable outdoors, especially when I'm wearing my long-haul jeans. Not only are long-haul jeans practical, they're the most comfortable jeans I've ever worn. Long-haul jeans are cut bigger in the seat and the thighs, and they're made from stretch denim, so they look good and feel good, even when I stretch, bend, or sit. And that's important, because it looks like I'm going to be sitting here quite a while.
Long-haul jeans, the most comfortable jeans you'll ever wear.
Join the jet set on television's glittering hour of excitement on the next special edition. Screen legend Lana Turner in Egypt's mystical deserts on her journey of a lifetime. Roger Moore's toughest assignment, a Rolls-Royce rally to track down the finest French wine. The wacky things Americans do for money, plus a discreet Mexican hideaway where the stars go for romance. The thrills continue on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, where fortune is the final frontier.
Sunday at 1:30 during Sports Free Sunday.
Invest in our uncommon wealth. Make a check for wildlife on your 1984 South Carolina income tax form. Thanks from the South Carolina Wildlife and Marine Resource.
Hi, I'm Alan Fawcett. Have you seen Putting on the Hits yet? Well, if you have, tell your friends. And if you haven't, you're missing the most unique and exciting show on television. It's a contest, a music show, a comedy show made all just for you. And one of these 6 straight lip-sync contestants will qualify for a semifinals and a shot at our $25,000 grand prize. So watch for Putting on the Hits, the show that makes you the star you've always wanted to be. Yeah!
Sunday at 2:30 during Sports Free Sunday.
That's what my hominy bread looks like. It's not quite done yet. It'll be ready in about 20 more minutes. That's all the time we have. We'll see you here next week. Please do not litter. Do yourself a favor. Take a kid fishing.
The Southern Sportsman has been brought to you in part by House Autry, proven cornmeal and flour products. The Southern Sportsman Game and Seafood Restaurant, the best.